I didn't go to that bar looking for love. I went there because I was tired of feeling invisible. 3 months after my divorce, I wanted one reckless moment, one small, petty victory, a drink I couldn't afford, a dress I wore to remind myself I still existed. And then I saw my ex-husband at the bar, laughing, confident, with a woman who looked like she had never been broken in her life. That was when I turned to the stranger beside me and asked the stupidest, most dangerous question of my life. Could you dance with me? My ex is watching. He didn't smile. He didn't flirt. He didn't even ask my name. He followed my gaze, looked at my ex-husband, and something cold passed through his eyes. Not jealousy, not curiosity, recognition. When he took my hand, the music felt distant, like it had sunk underwater. The crowd seemed to shift around us, creating space without being asked. And I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. 2 men in dark suits had started watching us. I didn't know then that the man holding me wasn't just confident. He was feared, protected, untouchable. And I had just stepped into his world over a single, impulsive request. By the end of the night, my ex-husband would be shaking. My future would change. And I would realize some dances don't end when the music stops. I knew something was wrong the moment he took my hand. It wasn't the eager grasp of a man hoping for a flirtation, nor the careless touch of someone fueled by alcohol and music. His fingers closed around mine lightly, almost gently, yet there was an unmistakable certainty in the way he held me, as if he was accustomed to being followed without question. The bass of the music throbbed through the floor, glasses clinked, laughter burst and dissolved into the haze of neon lights. But around him, the noise seemed to dull, as though the air itself had tightened, pressed into stillness. "Just one dance," I said quickly, before I could lose my nerve. "My ex-husband is watching." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. I hadn't planned to admit that much. I hadn't planned anything at all. He didn't ask why, didn't ask what kind of man my ex was, didn't even ask my name. Instead, he followed the direction of my gaze. His eyes found Ryan instantly leaning against the bar, confident, careless, his hand resting on the lower back of a woman who looked like she had never cried herself to sleep. For half a second, nothing happened. Then I saw it. Something flickered in the stranger's eyes, sharp and cold enough to make my spine prickle. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. Not the recognition of a rival, but the recognition of someone being measured, evaluated, found wanting. "All right," he said at last. His voice was calm, low, controlled, not raised to be heard over the music. Yet I heard it perfectly. One dance. That was it. No flourish, no smile. When he stepped closer and guided me toward the dance floor, his hand settled at my lower back with a familiarity that made my breath hitch. Not possessive, not yet, but steady, deliberate, as if he were ensuring I wouldn't stumble. The crowd parted for us. I didn't notice it immediately. At first, I thought it was coincidence, a lucky opening on a crowded floor. But as we moved, people shifted aside again. And again, shoulders turned. Conversations paused. Eyes glanced up. Then quickly away. It was subtle. Too subtle to be coincidence. I risked a glance up at him. He was taller than I'd realized. His presence composed rather than imposing. Dark hair, neatly styled. A suit that didn't shout wealth, but whispered it tailored, understated, flawless. He wasn't dancing for show. He wasn't trying to impress. Jeez. He moved like someone who didn't need to. "This is ridiculous," I murmured, more to myself than to him. "I don't even know your name." "You don't need it," he replied. There was no arrogance in his tone, just certainty. The music slowed, melting into something sensual and intimate. He adjusted his hold effortlessly, guiding me closer, his palm warm through the thin fabric of my dress. I told myself it was harmless, that this was just a performance, a brief illusion meant to sting my ex's ego. But when I dared to look past his shoulder, I saw Ryan staring at us, not with amusement, not with smug superiority, with confusion, then irritation, and then something else. Unease. Ryan leaned toward his girlfriend, saying something sharp. She frowned, followed his gaze, and shrugged dismissively. But Ryan didn't shrug. His eyes had locked onto the man holding me, and I watched color drain slowly from his face. "Your ex doesn't look pleased," the stranger murmured near my ear. His breath brushed my skin, sending a shiver down my spine. "That was the idea," I said, though my voice sounded thinner than I intended. "Is it?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. I didn't answer, because the truth was, I wasn't sure anymore. As we turned, I noticed movement near the edge of the dance floor, 2 men in dark suits, positioned too deliberately to be club security. Their gazes never left us, or rather, never left him. A pulse of unease fluttered low in my stomach. "Are those—" I began. He followed my glance and smiled faintly. The smile didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said. That should have reassured me. Instead, it made my heart beat faster. Ryan had pushed away from the bar now, his movements jerky. He said something to his girlfriend, who looked annoyed as he left her standing alone. "He's coming over," I whispered. "I know," the stranger replied. His grip tightened just slightly and he shifted his stance, placing himself squarely between me and the approaching threat. The music continued, oblivious. Ryan stopped a few steps away, his bravado faltering as he took in the scene. His gaze flicked from me to the man holding me, then past him, to the 2 suited figures standing watch. "What the hell is this?" Ryan demanded. His voice slurred with alcohol and indignation. The stranger didn't answer immediately. He finished the turn, guiding me gracefully to a stop, then looked at Ryan as if he were something inconvenient that had wandered into his path. "She's dancing," he said calmly. "You're interrupting." Ryan scoffed, though it sounded forced. "And who are you supposed to be?" for the first time since I'd met him. The stranger's expression changed. Not anger, not annoyance, something colder. "You don't need to know," he said. The words weren't loud. They weren't threatening. Yet the effect was immediate. Ryan's posture stiffened. His mouth opened, then closed again. I realized, with a jolt, that my ex-husband, the man who had once called me weak, insignificant, was afraid. "Come on, man," Ryan said, attempting a laugh. "This is between me and my wife. Ex-wife," I corrected automatically. The stranger's hand remained steady at my back. "And it's over," he added. Ryan's gaze darted again, this time openly, toward the men in suits. One of them met his eyes. Didn't blink. Ryan swallowed. "This isn't finished," he muttered, backing away. "No," the stranger replied softly. "It is." Ryan retreated, bumping into another dancer as he hurried back toward the bar. The music swelled, swallowing the moment whole. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My legs felt unsteady. "Thank you," I said, turning toward the man beside me. "For that?" I didn't expect he looked down at me, studying my face with unsettling intensity. "You shouldn't ask strangers for favors," he said quietly. "I didn't think I know," he interrupted gently. "That's why it worked." Before I could ask what he meant, he stepped back, releasing my hand. "One dance," he said again, as if reminding us both. "It's finished." He inclined his head, a gesture that felt old-fashioned, almost formal, then turned and walked away. The 2 men in dark suits fell into step behind him. I watched them disappear into the crowd, my heart pounding. Only then did I understand the twist of the night. I hadn't chosen a random stranger to dance with. I had chosen the wrong man. And somehow, that wrong choice felt like the beginning of something I wouldn't be able to escape. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel to enjoy many more heart-stirring stories every week. I stood on the edge of the dance floor long after he disappeared, my pulse still racing, my hand strangely cold where his fingers had been moments before. One dance. That was all it had been. And yet the room felt altered, as if something invisible had shifted its axis. Ryan was back at the bar, pretending to laugh too loudly, his girlfriend frowning beside him. Every few seconds, his eyes flicked in my direction, not with anger now, but with calculation. It unsettled me more than his earlier hostility. I knew that look. It was the look he wore when he was trying to regain control of a situation slipping through his fingers. I should have left then. That would have been the smart thing to do. Instead, I returned to my seat, my drink untouched, my thoughts tangled around a man whose name I didn't even know. "You okay?" the bartender asked, sliding past to wipe the counter. Yes, I lied. Just needed air. I took a sip of my cocktail. It tasted watered down, thin, nothing like the sharp clarity flooding my senses. The music changed again, faster now, as if the night were urging everyone to forget what had just happened. I couldn't. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I began to convince myself I'd imagined the intensity of the encounter, that he'd simply been a confident stranger, nothing more. That Ryan's fear had been coincidence, amplified by alcohol and wounded pride. That was when someone sat beside me, not close enough to touch, not far enough to be accidental. "You didn't leave," he said. His voice slid easily through the noise, low and unmistakable. I turned, my breath catching before I could stop it. He hadn't removed his jacket. The suit still fit him as flawlessly as before, but now the light caught his face more clearly. His expression was unreadable, his dark eyes steady, observant, watching me as if I were a problem he hadn't yet decided how to solve. "I thought you were gone," I said. I rarely leave without knowing how things end. The implication lingered between us, unsettling and strangely intimate. "Is that so?" I asked, lifting my glass to hide the slight tremor in my hand. He nodded once. "Your ex hasn't stopped staring since I walked away." I stiffened. "I don't need you managing him." "I know," he said, "but he needs managing." The certainty in his tone sent a shiver through me. I set my glass down. "You didn't have to step in back there." "No." He agreed. "I chose to." Our eyes held. The air between us tightened again, just as it had on the dance floor. "Why?" I asked. This time. He didn't answer immediately. He glanced toward the bar, where Ryan was now pretending not to watch us. His body angled too carefully away, because men like him mistake silence for weakness. He said at last, "And I don't..." The words were calm, reasonable, dangerous. I swallowed. "You talk like you know him. I know his kind." Before I could press further, Ryan stood abruptly, knocking his stool back. His girlfriend said something sharp, clearly annoyed, but he brushed past her and started toward us again. My shoulders tensed instinctively. The man beside me noticed. "Stay here," he said quietly. "I didn't ask you to, I know." He rose smoothly, unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world. Ryan slowed mid-step when he realized who was approaching him. I watched the moment recognition truly landed, watched bravado drain from Ryan's face like color from a photograph. "You," Ryan muttered. The man tilted his head slightly. "Me." They stood a few feet apart, the noise of the bar buzzing obliviously around them. No shouting, no threats, just an invisible line drawn between predator and prey. "I don't want trouble," Ryan said quickly. "That's fortunate," the man replied. "Because you can't afford it." Ryan's jaw tightened. "This doesn't concern you." The man's gaze flicked briefly to me, then returned to Ryan. "Everything that concerns her concerns me." My heart skipped. "That's ridiculous," Ryan scoffed weakly. "You don't even know her." A pause. Then the man said something so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "I know enough." Ryan's face went slack. His mouth opened, then closed again. He glanced around, as if suddenly aware of eyes watching from the shadows. "I'm leaving," he muttered. "I suggest you do," the man said, "and I suggest you don't seek her out again." Ryan hesitated, pride warring with fear. Fear won. He backed away, nearly colliding with another patron, and disappeared toward the exit without another word. The man returned to me as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. "You should go," he said. The instruction surprised me. You're dismissing me now, I'm advising you, he corrected. This place no longer offers you anything but complications. I studied his face, searching for mockery or control. I found neither. What about you, I asked. Aren't you a complication? His lips curved slightly, not a smile, something subtler. I'm inevitable, he said. But only if you let me be. The words settled into me slowly, unsettling and intriguing in equal measure. I don't even know your name, I said. He considered this. Daniel. Just Daniel again. And you, he asked. Ella. He repeated it softly, as if testing how it fit. Ella. The way he said my name made my pulse jump. I'll walk you out, he said. I can manage, I know. He interrupted gently. Indulge me. Outside, the night air was cool, the city humming with distant traffic. A black car waited at the curb, its engine idling quietly. It hadn't been there earlier. Or maybe it had, and I simply hadn't noticed. You planned this, I said. No, Daniel replied. I prepared for it. The distinction mattered. He opened the door for me. I hesitated only a second before getting in. The interior smelled faintly of leather and something clean, expensive. When Daniel slid in beside me, the door closed with a soft, final sound that made my heart race. Where are we going? I asked. Home, he said. A pause. Yours, he clarified, unless you prefer otherwise. The question surprised me. You're giving me a choice I always do. The car pulled away from the curb. As the city lights blurred past the window, I realized something with startling clarity. I wasn't afraid of Daniel. I was afraid of how calm I felt with him, of how quickly the chaos of the night had quieted in his presence, of how easily he'd stepped into the space Ryan had once occupied and eclipsed him completely. Why me? I asked suddenly. Why intervene at all? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Because you didn't ask for protection. He said, you asked for a dance. I frowned. And that matters. It matters, he replied, because it means you still believe you deserve to be seen. The words hit deeper than I expected. The car slowed, pulling up in front of my apartment building. Humble, familiar, a stark contrast to the man beside me. Daniel didn't move to follow me out. This is where I stop, he said. I hesitated, my hand on the door. Will I see you again? He met my gaze, unblinking. That depends. On what? On whether you're willing to accept that some encounters change things, he said, even when they begin with something as simple as one wrong dance. I stepped out of the car, my legs unsteady. As the door closed behind me and the car pulled away, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. That dance was over, but whatever it had started was just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my narrow bed staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the familiar hum of my old refrigerator, my mind replaying every second of the evening like a scene I couldn't pause or escape. Daniel's voice, his eyes, the way the bar had seemed to rearrange itself around him, the calm authority that had made Ryan my Ryan back away without a fight. I told myself it was adrenaline, shock, the aftertaste of humiliation mixed with relief. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. The truth was simpler and far more dangerous. I had felt safe, seen, and that frightened me more than Ryan ever had. Morning came too quickly. I dragged myself through my routine, pulling on scrubs, tying my hair back with practiced efficiency. At the hospital, chaos swallowed me whole in the way it always did. Patients, charts, alarms, blood pressure cuffs snapping shut. For hours, I didn't think about Daniel. I couldn't afford to. In the emergency department, distraction was a luxury no one survived. It wasn't until my lunch break, if 10 minutes gulping coffee in a supply closet counted, that my phone buzzed. An unknown number. For a heartbeat. I considered ignoring it. Then my pulse betrayed me as I opened the message. Did you sleep at all? Ella. No greeting. No explanation. Just my name. My fingers hovered over the screen. I hadn't given him my number. I was certain of that. "How did you get this number?" I typed, then deleted it. Too accusatory. Instead, "Barely." "You?" The reply came almost instantly. "Enough." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. "You shouldn't text me," I wrote. "You said last night was over." A pause. Long enough that I felt foolish for expecting immediacy. Then I said the dance was over. I didn't say the consequences were. I slipped the phone into my pocket. My break suddenly over. The rest of the shift passed in a blur, but I was acutely aware of the weight of my phone against my thigh, like a secret pressing to be acknowledged. When my shift finally ended, dusk had already painted the sky bruised purple. I stepped outside, exhaustion pulling at my bones, and froze. Daniel stood across the street. He wasn't dressed like he had been the night before. No suit, no polished formality, just dark jeans, a charcoal jacket, his hair slightly tousled by the wind. He looked real, more dangerous somehow for it. "You're stalking me now?" I asked, crossing my arms as I approached him. He shook his head. "I'm making sure you get home. I didn't ask you to." I know. There it was again. That infuriating calm. That certainty. "Ryan came by," he said, as if discussing the weather. My stomach dropped. "What?" "Not here," he added. "To my office." My heart hammered. "You went after him. I invited him." "That's worse," I snapped. "You had no right." Daniel studied me carefully, as if weighing how much truth I could handle. "He owes you $40,000. The words landed with brutal precision. I laughed, sharp and humorless. "That's none of your business." It became my business when he used leverage to keep it. I stared at him. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," he said gently. "His friend at the bank, the delayed transfer, the paperwork that never quite processed." My breath caught. How I pay attention. Anger flared hot and sudden. "You investigated me." "Yes." The admission was calm, unapologetic. "That's not okay," I said. "You don't get to dig through my life like that." "You're right," he replied. "I don't get to." "I chose to." The audacity of it stole my words. "You're crossing a line." "I crossed it the moment you asked me to dance," he said quietly. "The difference is, I'm honest about it." Silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken things. Cars passed. People laughed somewhere nearby, blissfully unaware. "What did you say to him?" I asked finally. Daniel's gaze darkened. I reminded him that stealing has consequences. "That sounds like a threat." "That sounds like the truth." Fear curled low in my stomach, cold and sharp. "I don't want your help." He stepped closer, not crowding, not touching, but close enough that I felt his presence like gravity. "You've been trying to do this alone. It's admirable, but it's also unnecessary. You don't get to decide that." "No," he agreed. "You do." His phone vibrated. He ignored it. "Ryan will return the money," Daniel said. "Soon." My chest tightened painfully. "And if he doesn't," Daniel's expression didn't change. "He will." There was no arrogance in his tone, only certainty. "That scares me," I admitted. "Good," he said softly. "It means you understand what's at stake." "What's at stake?" I shot back. "Is my life, my independence. I won't trade one controlling man for another." Something shifted in his eyes at that. Not anger, something closer to regret. "I'm not Ryan," he said. "I know," I replied. "That's what makes you more dangerous." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stepped back, creating space where tension had been. "You're right," Daniel said, "and that's why this only works if you choose it." He held out his hand, not to pull me anywhere, not to claim me, just an offer, suspended between us. "Dinner," he said, "tomorrow, public place, 1 hour. If at any point you want to leave, you do. No questions, no pressure." I looked at his hand, then at his face. And if I say no? He nodded once, then I walk away. I searched for the lie. I didn't find it. Why are you doing this? I asked quietly. Because you were invisible, he said. And you shouldn't have been. The words cracked something open in my chest. I hated that he was right. Hated that he had seen what I'd spent months denying. I'll think about it, I said. Daniel lowered his hand. That's all I ask. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with my heart racing and my world slightly off balance. That night, Ryan called. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. And again. Finally. A text. We need to talk. It's about the money. I stared at the screen, my pulse thundering. Daniel's message came seconds later, as if summoned by my fear. You're not alone in this. I didn't reply, but for the first time since my divorce, I believed it might be true. Ryan showed up at my apartment 2 days later. I knew it was him before I even looked through the peephole. There was a particular way he knocked too hard, too insistent, as if volume alone could force compliance. My body reacted before my mind did, shoulders tightening, breath going shallow. For years, that sound had meant arguments, accusations, demands disguised as concern. I almost didn't open the door. Almost. When I did, he stood there with the dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his jaw I'd never seen before. Gone was the smug confidence, the careless charm. He looked rattled. We need to talk, he said, his gaze flicking past me into the apartment, as if expecting someone else to be there. There's nothing to talk about, I replied, keeping my voice even. It's about the money, he said quickly. I can explain. I let out a short laugh. You've had months to explain. He swallowed, then lowered his voice. Can I come in? No. For a moment, anger flared in his eyes. Then something else replaced it, fear. Real fear. It unsettled me more than his rage ever had. Fine, he muttered. Then I'll say it here. I'm working on returning it. My heart skipped despite myself. Working on it. There were complications. There are always complications when it comes to doing the right thing, I said coldly. He flinched. You don't understand what's happening. I understand perfectly, I snapped. You stole from me. His face tightened. I didn't steal. You diverted funds, delayed transfers, hid behind your friend at the bank. Call it whatever helps you sleep. Silence stretched. The hallway felt suddenly too narrow, the air thick with unspoken things. You shouldn't be involving him, Ryan said at last. My pulse spiked. Involving who? He hesitated, then exhaled sharply. Daniel. The way he said the name like it burned sent a chill down my spine. I said, he involved himself. Ryan laughed without humor. That's worse. Why, I demanded, who is he to you? Ryan's gaze darted down the hall, then back to me. You don't know what you've stepped into. I didn't step into anything. I said, you did when you decided to steal from me. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I'm serious. Ella, that man he doesn't play by normal rules. No, I agreed quietly. He doesn't, and that doesn't scare you. I thought of Daniel's calm voice, his steady gaze, the way he'd offered choice instead of control. It does, I said honestly, but not for the reasons you think. Ryan stared at me, confusion flickering across his features. You need to cut contact with him. I laughed again, sharper this time. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. This isn't about control, he insisted. This is about survival. I met his eyes. Then you should have thought about that before you took my money. He opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. I'll return it, he said. Soon. Just give me time. How much time? I asked. He hesitated. A few days. I shook my head. No, you've had enough. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went pale. "I have to go," he said abruptly. "Running away again?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just turned and left. Footsteps echoing down the stairwell like a retreat. The moment the door closed, my knees weakened. I leaned against it, heart pounding, anger and relief tangling inside me. Ryan had never looked at me that way before, not like I was suddenly dangerous to him by association. My phone buzzed almost immediately. "He came to see you." Daniel's message appeared on the screen. I stared at it, a mix of irritation and unease rising. "You're watching me now," I typed. "No," he replied. "He called me afterward." My stomach clenched. What did he say? A pause, longer this time. He said he wants this resolved quietly. "And you?" Another pause. "I said that depended on you." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "I didn't ask you to negotiate on my behalf." "I know," Daniel replied. "That's why I didn't." I sank onto the couch, exhaustion washing over me. "Then what did you do?" I listened. The simplicity of it caught me off guard. "He's afraid," Daniel continued. "Not of me, of exposure, of consequences, the kind that don't disappear with apologies." I rubbed my temples. "I don't want revenge. I know. I just want what's mine. And you'll have it." The certainty in his words both comforted and unnerved me. "At what cost?" I asked. Several seconds passed before he answered. "That's the question. Isn't it?" That night, sleep came in fragments. Dreams tangled with memories. Ryan's voice layered over Daniel's, the past colliding with the present in uneasy ways. By morning, I felt wrung out, my nerves stretched thin. At the hospital, I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. Patients didn't care about my personal drama. They needed focus, competence, calm. I gave them everything I had. It was near the end of my shift when Maggie cornered me near the nurse's station. "You look like hell," she said bluntly. "Thanks," I replied. "You're glowing yourself," she snorted. "Try again." "What's going on?" I hesitated, then sighed. "Ryan's trying to give the money back." Her eyes widened. "What, the same? Ryan who swore you'd never see a dime?" "That one." She studied me carefully. "And let me guess, this has something to do with your mysterious bar savior." I grimaced. "Possibly." "Ella," she said gently. "Be careful." "I am." I insisted. She raised an eyebrow. "Are you—" I didn't answer. That evening, as I left the hospital, Daniel was waiting again, but this time, he didn't approach. He leaned against his car across the street, watching, giving me space. I crossed over, my steps deliberate. "You don't need to keep showing up." "I know," he said. "But I want to." I studied him, the tension in his posture, the restraint. "Ryan says you're dangerous." Daniel's lips curved slightly. "Ryan would. And are you?" He met my gaze steadily, only to people who confuse kindness for permission. The answer resonated deeper than I expected. "I don't want to owe you," I said quietly. "You don't," he replied. "This isn't a transaction." "Then what is it?" He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching me. A line being drawn between past and future, between fear and possibility. He didn't say it, but I felt it. "Come with me," he said, "just for dinner. Somewhere public. You can leave whenever you want." I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because I did. "Ryan might return the money," I said. "Soon?" Daniel nodded. "Good. That doesn't bother you." He said, "It means you won't need me for that. And if I don't need you—" His gaze softened, something unguarded flickering through. "Then whatever remains is real." The honesty in his voice tipped the balance. "Dinner," I agreed. 1 hour. His smile was brief, restrained, but unmistakably genuine. 1 hour. As I got into his car, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. Protection always comes with a price. The question was whether I was willing to pay it or whether walking away would cost me even more. The restaurant Daniel chose was nothing like the places Ryan used to favor when we were married. There were no blinding chandeliers, no aggressive displays of wealth meant to impress strangers. It was quiet, understated, tucked away on a side street most people passed without noticing. Candlelight softened the room, and conversations remained low, intimate, as if everyone inside had mutually agreed not to intrude on one another's worlds. "This doesn't feel like your kind of place," I said as the host led us to a secluded table. Daniel glanced around once, assessing, then pulled out my chair. "It is when I want to think." I sat, acutely aware of every movement, every look. The promise of 1 hour hung between us like a fragile truce. I told myself I was here for clarity, not temptation, that I would leave unchanged. The waiter arrived, poured water, disappeared. Silence settled, not awkward, not strained, expectant. "You look tense," Daniel observed. "I am," I replied. "You said dinner. You didn't say interrogation." His lips curved slightly. "I won't interrogate you, but I won't pretend nothing is happening either." I folded my hands together, grounding myself. "Then let's be honest. That's all I ask." I took a breath. Ryan showed up again. He says he's returning the money because of pressure from corporate lawyers. Daniel's expression didn't shift. That may be true. Maybe. He's motivated by multiple fears. Daniel said calmly, "Legal exposure is one of them." And the others I pressed. His gaze held mine. I won't put words in his mouth. I frowned. That's not an answer. It's the only one that doesn't insult your intelligence. The waiter returned, took our orders. Daniel didn't look at the menu. He ordered simply, confidently, then waited until we were alone again before speaking. "I won't deny I spoke to him," he said. "But I didn't threaten him. Ryan disagrees. Ryan lies when he's afraid." I exhaled slowly. "You make it sound so simple, as if fear is a lever you can pull whenever it suits you." Daniel leaned back slightly, studying me. "Fear is already there. I don't create it. I just remind people where it comes from." The honesty unsettled me more than any denial could have. "And if I asked you to stop," I said quietly, "I would." He answered without hesitation. The immediate response caught me off guard. "Just like that, Is? You wouldn't argue no. Why?" "Because if you stay," he said, "I want it to be because you choose to, not because I've eliminated every other option." Something in my chest tightened painfully at that. Our food arrived, a welcome interruption. I focused on the plate in front of me, the delicate arrangement, the care evident in every detail. I took a bite, realized I was starving in ways that had nothing to do with hunger. "You work too much," Daniel said. I laughed softly. "You sound like my sister. You use work to avoid feeling," he replied. "That's different." I looked up sharply. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "No," he agreed. "But I know patterns." "And what pattern do you think I'm following, one where you punish yourself for surviving?" The words landed harder than I expected. I set my fork down, appetite suddenly gone. "You think I'm punishing myself, I think," Daniel said carefully. "That you were hurt by someone who made you feel small. And instead of letting that anger turn outward, you turned it inward." I stared at him, stunned by the precision of it. "You're wrong." He didn't argue. "Then tell me why you stayed so long with a man who took from you." The question felt intimate, invasive, and devastatingly fair. "I loved him," I said finally. Or at least, I loved who I thought he was. Daniel nodded slowly. "That's not weakness. It feels like it. Only because he benefited from convincing you it was." Silence settled again. Heavier this time, charged with unspoken truths. I realized with a jolt that Daniel wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't performing. He was paying attention, And that might have been the most dangerous thing of all. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Not the money, not Ryan." This? His gaze softened, something unguarded flickering through before he schooled his expression again. "Because you didn't collapse when you could have. That's not a reason to involve yourself in someone's life. It is to me." The intensity of his focus made my breath hitch. "You barely know me. I know enough to recognize someone who refuses to disappear." The words resonated deeply, painfully. I looked away, blinking back the sudden sting in my eyes. "This is moving too fast." Daniel nodded. "Yes, you're not denying it." "No. But speed doesn't always mean recklessness. Sometimes it means clarity, and sometimes it means disaster." A faint smile touched his lips. "True." When we finished eating, he checked his watch. 10 minutes left. Relief and disappointment tangled inside me. I meant what I said. I told him, "I won't be controlled again. Not by anyone." "You won't be," Daniel said. "Not by me. And if I walk away after tonight, I'll let you." I studied his face, searching for resentment, for manipulation. I found none, only restraint. "And if I don't?" I asked softly. His eyes darkened, something fierce and unmistakable burning beneath the surface. "Then I'll be honest with you. Always. Even when it costs me." The words hung between us, a promise heavier than any declaration of love. We stood. Outside. The night had cooled, the street quiet and dimly lit. Daniel didn't reach for me. He waited. "This is where the hour ends," he said. I nodded, suddenly aware of the weight of the choice before me. "Yes." And he prompted gently. I looked at him, at the man who frightened Ryan, unsettled me, and somehow made the world feel steadier all at once. "I don't know what comes next," I said, "but I don't want to pretend this didn't matter." A slow smile spread across his face. "Not triumph. Recognition. Then let it matter," he said. As he walked me to his car, I realized something with quiet certainty. That hour hadn't changed everything, but it had changed me, and there was no turning back from that. The first message came the next morning. Not a demand, not an invitation dressed as one. Just 3 words that unsettled me more than anything else he could have said. "Did you eat?" I stared at my phone in the quiet of my kitchen, sunlight cutting across the chipped countertop. It was such a small question, absurdly ordinary compared to the tension that had followed us since the bar. And yet it carried weight, because it wasn't about possession or progress. It was about attention. "Not yet," I replied after a moment. "I'm running late." The response didn't come immediately this time. When it did, it was simple. "There's soup in the container I left with your doorman last night. Don't skip meals." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I hadn't noticed the container until then, tucked discreetly on the kitchen counter like an afterthought. He hadn't mentioned it, hadn't waited for thanks. That, more than anything, unsettled me. The days that followed slipped into a strange, delicate rhythm. Daniel didn't call every hour. He didn't ask where I was, who I was with, what I was thinking. He checked in once a day, sometimes less. A message in the morning, a brief call at night. Always an opening, never an expectation. Ryan, on the other hand, unraveled. The money appeared in my account on Thursday afternoon. $40,000. Exact. Clean transfer. I stared at the screen for a long time, numbness spreading slowly through my chest. It wasn't joy that came first. It was grief for the months of fear, the nights calculating rent down to the last dollar, the quiet shame of asking my sister for help. Daniel didn't text to celebrate. He texted an hour later. "It's done." That was all. I should have felt relieved. I did. But beneath the relief was something darker. Heavier, the understanding that the world didn't bend like that without force being applied somewhere out of sight. I didn't ask how. That night, I went to him. Not because he asked. Because the space between us had become unbearable. His building rose from the street like a statement glass in steel, understated yet unmistakably guarded. The doorman greeted me by name without asking. That should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent a strange warmth through my chest, as if I'd crossed an invisible threshold. Daniel opened the door himself. No jacket, no suit, just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, collar undone. He looked momentarily surprised to see me, and then something in his eyes shifted, softened. "You came," he said. "I needed to." I replied, and stepped inside before I could reconsider. His apartment was quiet, expansive without being cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, lights scattered like constellations against the dark. Everything about the space was controlled, deliberate. And yet, there were signs of life books left open. A mug on the counter, a jacket draped over a chair. Daniel closed the door behind me. For a moment, we just stood there. "This doesn't mean anything," I said quickly. "I'm not making promises." "I know," he replied. "Neither am I." That should have reassured me. Instead, it made my pulse race. "I got the money back," I said. "You were right." "Yes. And I hate that." A faint smile touched his lips. "Most people do." I turned to face him fully. "I need to know something." "Ask." "If I stay tonight, does that mean I'm choosing your world?" Daniel's expression grew serious. "No, it means you're choosing this moment. And if I leave tomorrow, I'll walk you to the door." The simplicity of it disarmed me. No conditions, no leverage. I nodded slowly. "All right." We didn't rush. That surprised me most of all. He poured me a glass of water before wine, asked if I was hungry, listened when I spoke, really listened, as if the sound of my voice mattered more than where the night might lead. When he finally touched me, it wasn't sudden, it was earned. His hand brushed my wrist first, tentative, asking without words. I didn't pull away. His fingers traced the inside of my arm, slow, deliberate, until my breath caught. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he said quietly. I met his gaze. "I won't." The kiss was nothing like I expected. No urgency, no claiming, just warmth, pressure, a depth of restraint that made my knees weaken far more than force ever could. His hands framed my face as if memorizing it, as if this moment mattered enough to be remembered exactly as it was. When we moved to the bedroom, the city lights followed us through the glass, silent witnesses to something intimate and unguarded. Daniel undressed me as if he had all the time in the world, each touch reverent, almost careful. "You don't owe me anything," he murmured against my skin. "I know," I whispered back. That was the truth, and also the problem. Later, long after the world narrowed to breath and heartbeat and warmth, I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling I didn't recognize. His arm rested loosely around my waist, not trapping, not claiming. I should have felt trapped. Instead, I felt anchored. It was when I shifted that I noticed it. The weight on the nightstand. Metal. Cold, even in the dim light. A gun. My body went still. Daniel sensed it immediately. He didn't move closer. Didn't tighten his hold. "Yes," he said softly. "It's real." My throat tightened. "You didn't tell me. You didn't ask," he replied. And I didn't want it to define this night. Silence stretched between us, heavy with implications. "You live like this," I said. "Yes. With danger. With responsibility." I turned to face him. "And if I get hurt?" His gaze met mine, dark and unwavering. Then I failed. The absolute certainty in his voice stole my breath. "I don't belong in this world." I said, "No." He agreed, "Is. You don't. And yet, he echoed. Sleep came slowly, tangled with thought and feeling. When I woke hours later, dawn had just begun to lighten the sky. Daniel was awake, watching the city, his expression unreadable. "Are you leaving?" I asked softly. "No," he replied, "unless you want me to." I shook my head. "I don't know what I want." "That's allowed," he said. "For now." He walked me home later that morning, just as promised. No pressure, no persuasion. At my door, he paused. "This doesn't have to happen again," he said. "I know. But if it does," he continued, "it will be because you choose it. Every time." I nodded, my chest tight. As he walked away, I realized the truth I hadn't been ready to face. There was no exit from this that didn't change me. And despite everything I knew, everything I feared, part of me didn't want one. The first crack appeared in a place I didn't expect. At work. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind that smelled of antiseptic and fatigue. My scrubs creased at the elbows, my feet aching in a way that no amount of coffee could cure. I was halfway through charting when I felt it, that subtle shift in the room, the kind my body recognized before my mind did. Someone was watching. I looked up. He wasn't in uniform, no badge, no clipboard, just a man leaning casually against the wall near the nurse's station, dark jacket open, hands relaxed at his sides, too relaxed. His gaze flicked away the moment our eyes met. My pulse spiked. By the time I finished my shift, he was gone. I didn't tell Daniel that night. I told myself it was nothing paranoia, leftover tension from a life that had been upended too quickly. But the feeling followed me home, clinging to my spine like a warning. The next day, there was a car parked across the street from my building. Black, tinted windows, engine off. I slowed my steps, my keys tight in my fist. The car didn't move, didn't need to. I went upstairs, locked the door, and stood there longer than necessary, listening to my own breathing. When I finally checked my phone, there was a message waiting. "Are you safe?" No greeting, no preamble. "I think so," I typed back. "Why?" The reply came instantly. "I need to see you." He didn't say where. He didn't have to. His apartment felt different this time, sharper, quieter. The air itself seemed alert, as if the walls were listening. Daniel greeted me with a kiss to my temple, brief but grounding, before stepping back and studying my face. "Something happened," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And I think you already know." He didn't deny it. "There's been movement," he said carefully. "People asking questions they shouldn't. About you. About us." The word settled between us, heavier than it should have been. "I didn't ask for this." I said, "I know, but I'm paying for it." His jaw tightened. "I won't let that continue." The certainty in his voice sent a chill through me. That's what scares me. Silence stretched. Not strained, measured. "You're right," he said finally. "This is the cost of being seen beside me?" I folded my arms. "So what's the solution? I pull you out of sight," he said. "Or I make it very clear that touching you is a mistake." I stared at him. "You're talking about escalation. I'm talking about protection." At what price? His eyes softened. Just slightly. Mine, I wanted to argue, to demand specifics. Instead, I asked the question that had been circling my mind for days. "If I walk away now?" I said, "What happens?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "You're left alone. Completely. No shadow, no reach. I make sure of it. And you..." A pause, a breath. I continue as I was. The honesty hurt more than any lie could have. "And if I stay?" His gaze darkened. "Then you stop being collateral." The word echoed uncomfortably. I turned toward the windows, city lights blinking indifferently beyond the glass. I never wanted to be a symbol. "You're not," he said quietly. "You're a line." That night, the truth found us. It came in the form of a phone call. Daniel's expression shifting mid-conversation, his body going still in a way I now recognized as dangerous. what he said softly. I watched the color drain from his face. When he ended the call, he didn't look at me right away. "Someone followed you from the hospital," he said. "Yesterday." My stomach dropped. "The man by the nurse's station." "Yes." "And the car." "Yes." I swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because until tonight, I believed I could contain it without you knowing. And now," he said, finally meeting my eyes, "I can't lie to you anymore." Fear threaded through my chest, sharp and unwelcome. "Daniel, I didn't choose this life." "No," he said, "but someone else chose to pull you into it." "What do they want?" He hesitated. Leverage. The word hit harder than I expected. "I won't be used," I said fiercely. "You won't," he replied just as firmly. "That's not negotiable." "What if they don't care what you say?" A dark smile touched his lips. "Then they'll learn." I should have walked out. I should have grabbed my coat, my bag, my sense of self-preservation, and never looked back. Instead, I reached for his hand. "What does staying mean?" I asked quietly. "It means trust," he said, "and patience, and boundaries that I won't cross without you. And if I say no, then tonight is the last time you stand in this space." I searched his face for manipulation. Found none. Only restraint. "Then tell me the truth." I said, "All of it." So he did. He told me about alliances that shifted like tides, about men who smiled while planning betrayals, about power that was never truly owned, only borrowed and defended daily. He told me where he drew his lines, who he protected, what he would never do. "And me?" I asked. "You," he said softly, "are not a weakness. Your clarity." The admission left me breathless. Later, when I lay awake beside him, the city hushed beneath the weight of night. I understood something fundamental. Danger wasn't what terrified me anymore. It was the idea of being unseen again. Morning brought resolve, sharp and unexpected. "I'm not hiding," I told him over breakfast. "I won't live in fear, and I won't pretend this isn't real." Daniel watched me carefully. "And what are you saying I'm saying?" I replied, steady despite the tremor in my hands. "That if I stay, it's because we face this honestly, together, no shadows between us." A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "Then," he said, reaching for my hand, "we begin properly." Outside, the city moved on, unaware that a line had been drawn not in blood or threat, but in choice. And choice, I was learning, was the most dangerous thing of all. The first rule Daniel set was simple. "You don't change who you are," he said. "I adapt around you, not the other way around." I wanted to believe him. I did believe him, at least in theory. In practice, adaptation came with shadows I couldn't ignore. My mornings were no longer silent. There was always a car I didn't recognize parked nearby. Always a subtle awareness that someone else was tracking my safety. Not hovering, not intrusive, just present. Like a second heartbeat I hadn't asked for. At work, the man from before didn't return. Instead, there was calm, too much of it. The kind that arrives right before something breaks. Daniel grew quieter, more contained. Not distant, but focused. When he kissed me goodbye in the mornings, it lingered just long enough to feel like a promise rather than reassurance. When he looked at me, it was with an intensity that suggested calculation layered beneath care. "You're thinking too much," I told him one evening as we stood by his window, city lights reflecting faintly in the glass. "I'm thinking enough," he replied. That night, the call came just after midnight. Daniel answered it with his back to me, voice low, controlled. I recognized the stillness in his shoulders immediately. When he turned back around, the warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by something harder, colder. "They're making a move," he said. "Who?" I asked. though I already knew. A rival who believes restraint is weakness. My stomach tightened. And you, I believe restraint is a choice, he said. One I won't abandon unless forced. What does that mean for us? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed the room and cupped my face gently, thumbs brushing beneath my eyes as if committing my expression to memory. It means tonight won't be quiet. The city answered him an hour later. It started with a power outage just his building, just long enough to draw attention. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the apartment in dim amber. The silence that followed felt deliberate. Daniel moved immediately, checking his phone, listening. "Stay here," he said, already heading toward the door. "No," I replied, grabbing his wrist. "You promised no shadows between us." He hesitated, conflict flashing across his face. Then he nodded once. "Then stay close." The elevator was out. We took the stairs, footsteps echoing sharply as we descended. The lobby was empty, too empty. Glass doors reflected distorted versions of ourselves as we stepped outside. The first shot shattered the quiet, not aimed at us. A warning. Daniel pulled me back instantly, shielding me with his body, his hand firm at my waist. His voice remained calm as he spoke into his phone, issuing instructions I couldn't hear. "Get to the car," he murmured. "Now." We didn't run. We moved quickly, deliberately, as two men appeared from the shadows. Not strangers, Daniel recognized them instantly. "Vega," one of them called. Always so dramatic. Daniel didn't respond. He opened the car door, ushering me inside before turning back to face them. The air felt electric, charged with years of unspoken rivalry. "This isn't about you," the man continued. "Step aside." Daniel's voice cut through the tension. "She's not a message. Everyone is a message," the other man replied. The words chilled me more than the gun visible at his side. Daniel stepped forward, unflinching. "Touch her, and this ends badly for you." Laughter followed, hollow and careless. "You've gone soft." Daniel smiled then, slow and cold. "No, I've drawn a line. I've drawn a What happened next unfolded too fast to fully process. Tires screeched. Commands barked. The sharp crack of another shot closer this time. The men retreated as quickly as they'd appeared, swallowed by the night. The car sped away, city blurring past the windows as my heart pounded against my ribs. Daniel's hand remained firmly clasped around mine, grounding, steady. "Are you hurt?" he asked, eyes scanning me with fierce intensity. "No," I whispered. "Are you?" "Yes," he replied. "But not the way you think." We didn't go back to his place. We went somewhere else, an older house, unassuming, tucked behind iron gates in silence. Inside, the walls were thick, the air still, safe. Only when the door closed behind us did the tension finally break. My legs gave out. Daniel caught me easily, guiding me to sit, kneeling in front of me as his hands shook for the first time since I'd known him. "This is what I tried to shield you from," he said quietly. I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. "And this is what you didn't understand. I don't want to be protected from reality. I want to be trusted with it." Something in his expression cracked. "I almost lost you tonight," he said, voice raw. "But you didn't," I replied. "And running won't erase what we already are." He leaned his forehead against mine, breath unsteady. "I can't promise safety. I'm not asking for safety." I said, "I'm asking for honesty." Silence settled between us, heavy but no longer frightening. Later, as dawn crept pale and tentative through the windows, Daniel sat beside me on the couch, his arm around my shoulders, no longer shielding sharing. "They won't try that again," he said. "How do you know? Because tonight changed the rules." I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "For them," I said softly, "and for us." He kissed the top of my head. "Yes." Outside, the city resumed its careless hum, unaware that lines had been crossed and redrawn. That power had been challenged not with force alone, but with refusal. And in the quiet aftermath, I realized something that frightened me more than the danger ever could. I wasn't standing beside him out of defiance anymore. I was standing beside him because I chose him. And that choice, once made, would demand its own reckoning. After that night, nothing exploded. That was the most unsettling part. No headlines. No police sirens outside the gate. No sudden disappearance of Daniel into some violent shadow world. Instead, life narrowed, sharpened, grew quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like the pause before a final move on a chessboard. Daniel became methodical, not distant, not cold precise. His mornings started earlier. His nights ended later. When he was with me, he was fully present, but I could feel the weight he carried just beneath the surface, like a current running under calm water. I learned to read the signs the way his jaw tightened when his phone buzzed, the stillness in his posture when he listened rather than spoke, the careful way he asked about my day, as if anchoring himself to something real. We didn't talk about forever. We didn't talk about endings either. What we shared existed in a suspended space between those two dangerous ideas. The city adjusted around us. The cars watching me changed less obvious, more respectful. The hospital remained my refuge, though even there I sensed the difference. People looked at me twice now, not because they knew anything specific, but because confidence carries a gravity of its own. I stood straighter, spoke more clearly. Fear no longer dictated the edges of my choices. Ryan didn't contact me again. That silence felt final in a way words never could. One evening, Daniel took me somewhere unexpected, not one of his guarded residences, not a restaurant bought out for privacy, but a public place, a small gallery opening near the river, full of soft music and conversation, wine glasses clinking under warm lights, no visible security, no tension humming in the air. "You're sure?" I asked quietly as we stepped inside. He nodded. "If I can't stand beside you here, I don't deserve to stand beside you at all." People noticed him, of course. They always did. But they noticed me too, not as an accessory, not as a vulnerability, as his equal, as a woman whose presence didn't diminish his power, but reshaped it. A man approached us midway through the evening, well-dressed, smile too careful. Daniel stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Vega," the man said smoothly. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Expectations are dangerous," Daniel replied. The man's gaze flicked to me, assessing, measuring. Daniel's hand settled at the small of my back. Not possessive, not defensive, declarative. "This is Ella," he said. "She stays." The man's smile faltered for half a second before returning. "Of course." When he walked away, I exhaled slowly. That was intentional. "Yes," Daniel admitted. "Tonight is about clarity. Yours or theirs." "Both. Later. By the river." The city reflected in dark water like fractured light. I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What happens next?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He rested his arms on the railing, gaze fixed on the current below. "I've been preparing an exit," he said finally. My heart skipped. "An exit?" "Not from you," he added quickly. "From the version of my life that guarantees this kind of threat." I turned to face him fully. "You're walking away." "I'm redirecting," he said. "Legitimate holdings, public structures, less power. Perhaps, but cleaner. And your rivals?" "They'll test the transition," he replied calmly. "They already are. And you're willing to do this. Because of me." He shook his head. "I'm doing it because of myself. You simply made the cost of staying the same impossible to ignore." The honesty in that sent a tremor through me. "Daniel," I said carefully, "I won't be the reason you dismantle your life." "You're not," he said softly. "You're the reason I'm rebuilding it." The words should have frightened me. Instead, they felt inevitable. The warning came 2 days later. Not violent, not dramatic. A meeting request. Private, neutral ground. One last attempt at negotiation. They want assurance. Daniel explained as we sat across from each other in the quiet house by the gates, that I won't come after them once I step back. And will you? No, he said, unless they force my hand. And if they don't believe you, then they'll try one final pressure point. My chest tightened. Me. He didn't deny it. They won't touch you, he said firmly. But they may try to remind me what I stand to lose. I rose from my seat, heart pounding. Then don't go. He stood as well. I have to. Why? Because if I don't, he said quietly, they'll keep circling. And one day, restraint won't be enough. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. I can't ask you to stay away, he continued. And I won't ask you to leave. So what are you asking? I whispered. He stepped closer, resting his forehead against mine. Trust me one more time. I closed my eyes, the weight of that request settling deep in my chest. That night, we didn't sleep much. We talked instead. About childhood fears. About mistakes we'd never admitted aloud. About the quiet terror of wanting something enough to risk everything for it. When dawn arrived, pale and uncertain, I knew the truth. The ending was already in motion. The next morning, Daniel dressed with deliberate care, dark suit immaculate, expression calm but resolute. He kissed me once before leaving, not hurried, not desperate, grounded. Whatever happens, he said, remember this wasn't an accident. I know, I replied. Hours passed. Then my phone rang. Not Daniel. An unknown number. My pulse quickened as I answered. Hello, Ms. Martinez, a male voice said evenly. This is a courtesy call. My spine went cold. Courtesy of whom? A mutual interest, he replied. We wanted to ensure you're comfortable. I am, I said, voice steady despite my racing heart. Good, he said. Then please convey a message. I'm listening. Tell Mr. Vega that pressure creates diamonds, the voice continued. But it also shatters glass. The line went dead. I stood there for a long moment, phone still pressed to my ear, understanding settling slowly, heavily. This wasn't over. It was converging. When Daniel finally returned that evening, his expression told me everything before he spoke. They accepted the terms, he said, publicly and privately. They're waiting, he admitted, to see if I hesitate. I stepped into his arms, gripping him tightly. And will you? No, he said, voice firm against my hair, but the final step requires something from you. I pulled back, meeting his gaze. What visibility, he said. The kind they can't twist. A choice made openly. My breath caught. You mean, yes. The realization hit like a slow wave. The end wasn't going to be quiet. It was going to be seen. And once it was, there would be no retreat, only the life that followed, for better or worse. I nodded, heart pounding, fear and resolve intertwining. All right, I said. Whatever Part 10 held, one truth was already clear. Some stories don't end with survival. They end with ownership of the choice that changed everything. The morning of the announcement arrived without drama. No alarms, no threats, no last-minute warnings. Just sunlight filtering through the curtains, pale and honest, touching Daniel's face as he stood by the window, fastening his cufflinks with deliberate calm. He looked different that morning, not softer, not harder, but resolved in a way that felt irreversible. This is your last chance to walk away, he said quietly without turning around. I smiled faintly. You've said that before, and you stayed. So did you. He turned then, studying my face as if searching for doubt. He didn't find it. Instead, he reached for my hand and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. Old world, restrained, deeply personal. Whatever happens today, he said, they'll know I didn't hesitate. And they'll know, I replied, that you weren't alone. The venue was public by design. A waterfront conference hall filled with glass and light. Journalists, investors, city officials, and men whose smiles never reached their eyes. Daniel's transition, his restructuring. His legitimate expansion was framed as business. That was the language they all pretended to speak. But underneath it, everyone understood what this was. A declaration. I stood beside him on stage when he spoke, not hidden, not protected in the shadows. Cameras flashed, eyes sharpened. Whispers rippled through the room. Daniel's voice was steady, measured, impossible to misinterpret. My interests are changing, he said. My methods are changing. And anyone who believes that transition creates opportunity for interference is mistaken. He paused, just long enough. Some lines are permanent. The room held its breath. Then he reached for my hand. Not as a shield, not as leverage, as fact. This, he continued, is not a vulnerability. It is a choice. The impact was immediate. I felt it in the subtle shifts, the men who stopped smiling, the ones who recalculated too late. Glass, once fragile, had become visible, untouchable in its exposure. The questions came after, polite, sharp, predictable. Daniel answered them all without flinching. When the event ended, there was no confrontation, no dramatic reckoning, just silence, the dangerous kind. We didn't celebrate that night. We went home, not to the guarded house, not to the old apartment, to the place we'd chosen together, a quiet residence overlooking the water. Still half empty, still ours in potential more than completion. Boxes lined the walls. A future mid-assembly. Daniel set his phone down and exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. It's done, he said. And if it's not, I asked. Then they'll learn, he replied simply, that my restraint was never weakness. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. Then something shifted. The cars disappeared. The tension eased. Daniel's calls shortened. His nights grew quieter. He slept deeper. I returned to my routines without watching my reflection in every window. One evening, as we cooked together, him awkward with spices, me laughing as he pretended competence, I realized something profound. We were boring. And it was perfect. Ryan never resurfaced. The money I reclaimed funded my future without guilt or fear. I enrolled fully, planned openly, lived without calculating escape routes. Daniel attended my graduation quietly, seated in the back, pride unmistakable in his eyes. You don't need me anymore, he said once, half teasing. I never needed you, I replied. I chose you. The difference mattered. The past didn't vanish. Daniel's world never became harmless, but it became honest. Boundaries hardened, power redistributed. The men who once tested him learned that transparency was more dangerous than secrecy. 1 year later, we returned to the place where it began, the same bar, different music, different people. We didn't dance right away. We sat, watched, remembered. Do you regret it? He asked softly. The dance, I smiled, or everything that followed, all of it. I thought for a long moment. No, I said, because I didn't disappear. I was seen. Daniel stood, extending his hand. Dance with me. This time, there was no audience to provoke, no past to defy. Just us. As we moved together, steady and unhurried, I rested my head against his chest, listening to a heartbeat that had learned a new rhythm. Not conquest, not control, but choice. Some love stories end in safety, some end in sacrifice. Ours ended in the open where nothing had to be hidden, and nothing was taken without consent. And that, I learned, was the most dangerous decision of all because it was the one we would keep choosing, every day, without fear.